It was a day that was supposed to be defined by the quiet anticipation of the holiday season, a Wednesday afternoon where the primary concern for most Washingtonians was beating the traffic out of the city for Thanksgiving. But in the blink of an eye, the festive atmosphere in the nation's capital was shattered by the sharp, unmistakable crack of gunfire. Right in the center of the District of Columbia, mere blocks from the White House, the streets turned into a scene of chaotic violence that has since sent shockwaves all the way to Mar-a-Lago. 2 members of the National Guard, soldiers deployed from West Virginia to help keep the peace in the swamp, were gunned down in a brazen daylight ambush. This was not a random mugging gone wrong. Authorities are painting a picture of a cold-blooded attack on the uniform, an incident that President Donald Trump has immediately branded an act of terror. The clock was ticking towards 2 p.m. Eastern Time when the peace was broken near the intersection of 14th and 15th Streets Northwest. This is a high-traffic corridor, usually packed with government staffers, lobbyists, and tourists soaking in the history of the Capitol. But on this Wednesday, the pavement was stained with blood. According to the Metropolitan Police Department, the 2 guardsmen were conducting a high-visibility patrol, a standard operation designed to show force and deter crime, when the suspect struck. Witnesses describe a terrifyingly swift sequence of events. A man emerged, possibly from a parked vehicle, or just stepping out from the urban camouflage of the street corner, and opened fire. There was no warning, no shouted demands, just the roar of a weapon discharging in the heart of the city. The reaction was instantaneous. The White House, sitting just a stone's throw away, went into immediate, hard lockdown. Secret Service agents flooded the lawns and the perimeter, weapons drawn, scanning the rooftops and the crowds. It is a protocol they drill for constantly, but seeing it unfold in real time is a different beast entirely. President Trump was not in the residence. He was down in Florida preparing for the holiday. But the machinery of the executive branch ground to a halt. For those agonizing minutes, nobody knew if this was a lone wolf acting out a sick fantasy or the opening salvo of a coordinated terrorist assault on the seat of American power. In the confusion that follows any active shooter situation, misinformation spread like wildfire. West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey, whose troops were the ones lying on the D.C. asphalt, initially issued a statement that stopped the heart of the nation. He announced that both soldiers had been killed. That news flashed across every screen in America, deepening the gloom of the day. However, in a twist that offered a desperate sliver of hope, the governor later had to walk back that claim. The soldiers were not dead, but they were in critical condition, fighting for every breath at George Washington University Hospital. It was a roller coaster of emotion for the families involved and for a public watching the drama unfold on cable news. Law enforcement's response on the street was aggressive and effective. The shooter did not get far. Police, working in tandem with federal agents, engaged and neutralized the threat. The suspect was wounded. Reports vary on whether it was by police fire or during the scuffle, and was taken into custody. But as the handcuffs clicked shut, the real story was only just beginning. The identity of the shooter has turned this from a tragic crime story into a massive political firestorm that is already reshaping administration policy. Federal Bureau of Investigation Director Kash Patel stepped into the spotlight to confirm the details that everyone in Washington was whispering about. The suspect is not an American citizen. He is a foreign national from Afghanistan. This revelation dropped like a bomb. According to Department of Homeland Security records, this individual arrived in the United States in September of 2021. The timing is impossible to ignore. It places his entry squarely in the chaotic aftermath of the U.S. withdrawal from Kabul, a period that President Trump has relentlessly criticized as one of the greatest foreign policy disasters in American history. The narrative was set instantly. This was no longer just a shooting. It was proof of concept for the president's warnings about the border and vetting processes. Speaking from his estate in Florida, President Trump did not hold back. He referred to the shooter as an animal, a term he uses to strip away the humanity of those who commit heinous acts of violence against Americans. Trump declared that this individual would pay a very high price for his actions. But the president's target list was bigger than just the gunman. He aimed his fury directly at the previous administration, blaming the Biden-Harris team for allowing unvetted dangers to slip through the cracks during the frenzied evacuation of 21. Trump's rhetoric was sharp and uncompromising. He invoked the memory of those evacuation flights, the ones packed with people desperate to leave Afghanistan, and labeled them disgraceful. In his view, the vetting was non-existent. a rubber stamp process that allowed potential threats to board planes and land in American communities. He claimed that the shooting of these National Guardsmen was the direct result of an open-door policy that has allowed millions of unknown foreigners to enter the country. He framed the incident as a clear example of the enemy within, a threat imported by bad policy and negligence. The administration's response has moved beyond just words. We are seeing a swift pivot to hardline action. President Trump has demanded a total forensic review of every single Afghan national who entered the United States during that withdrawal window. The order is clear: re-vet everyone. The Department of Homeland Security is now staring down the barrel of a massive logistical challenge, tasked with digging through the files of thousands of refugees to find any red flags that were missed the first time around. The message from the White House is blunt. If you are here and you do not love this country, or if there is even a hint of danger in your background, you are going back. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also weighed in, bringing the military perspective to the crisis. An attack on the National Guard is seen as an attack on the sovereignty of the nation. Hegseth announced that the Pentagon is responding with overwhelming force. An additional 500 National Guard troops are being deployed to the District of Columbia immediately. This is a show of force, plain and simple. The administration wants boots on the ground, a visible deterrent to show that the streets of the capital belong to the government, not to criminals or terrorists. The sight of more camouflaged soldiers on the corners of D.C. is a stark reminder that the city is effectively on a war footing. As investigators peel back the layers of the suspect's life, the motive remains the big unknown. Was this a calculated act of jihad? Was it a mental break? Or was it a personal grievance turned violent? The fact that the suspect is an Afghan national who lived in the U.S. for years before snapping raises uncomfortable questions about radicalization and the efficacy of integration. Intelligence agencies are likely scouring his digital footprint right now, looking for the manifesto or the chat logs that explain why he decided to pull the trigger on a Wednesday before Thanksgiving. The eyewitness accounts from the scene paint a picture of raw terror. People who were just going out for a coffee or heading to a lunch meeting suddenly found themselves diving behind concrete barriers. One witness described seeing the Secret Service and police swarming the area like a movie, but with the terrifying realization that the bullets were real. It is a trauma that will linger in the city for a long time. The shooting also disrupted travel, with Reagan National Airport briefly pausing flights, adding to the holiday chaos and spreading the anxiety far beyond the immediate blast radius of the crime scene. This event has become a catalyst. It has given the Trump administration the political capital to push through the most aggressive immigration enforcement measures seen in decades. The argument is no longer theoretical. They can point to the blood on the street and say, "We told you so." The push for extreme vetting is back, and it is going to be applied retroactively. The concept of the flight of shame that brought the shooter here is being used to delegitimize the entire refugee resettlement program of the last few years. For the two soldiers fighting for their lives and for their families back in West Virginia, the politics are secondary to the pain. But for the nation, their tragedy has become the pivot point for a new era of national security. President Trump has promised to make America safe again, and he is using this incident to define exactly what that looks like: sealed borders, aggressive deportation of criminals, and a military that is not afraid to police its own capital. The shots fired near the White House have ended the debate on immigration reform for this administration. Now it is simply about enforcement. The line has been drawn, and Washington is bracing for the crackdown that is sure to follow.